Thanks, Dan. Jack Murphy was killed last night. I could not believe it. I looked at the phone and I thought maybe I'm dreaming. I was a student in Rome at a time when I thought life was terrific. My parents had been immigrants from Italy, and here was their son going back, studying for a doctorate and living in the city of Rome. Now, Jack Murphy was my best friend, and he was 29 years old. If you've ever been through a trauma, the first thing you do is deny it. There's something wrong here. This can't happen. Jack can't be dead. But to give you an understanding of why it was such a trauma for me, it would be helpful if you understood what kind of zany, brilliant, wonderful, caring friend this man was. On my birthday, one cold November day, Jack took me to Osti's in New York because he knew I loved the opera. And when we got there was this tremendous line, and it was cold, and all of a sudden, Murph decides he's going to go inside. But before he goes, he turns to me and he says, "Take your overcoat off and put it on your shoulders like the Italians do." I put my overcoat on. He goes into the building. He comes back in about 2 minutes, and he waves me in and he says, "Come on, we're going inside." I said, "Okay, lunatic, what did you tell them?" He said, "Not much. I just told them you were Dr. Tagliareni, the very famous Italian heart surgeon." With that, we enter, and the owner now is running up to me, and he's native-born Italian. Now, I speak fluent Italian, but he's going to know I'm not a native. So he says, "Dottore Tagliareni." I said, "When I am in America, I only speak English." With that, the soprano now dedicates the song to me. I'm in the front table, and I turned to Jack and I said, "What happens if someone has a heart attack?" He says, "Jump on his chest and start banging away." That was Jack Murphy. Now, I preached his eulogy, but any of you who ever have been through sudden death know that is the easiest part. When I got back to Rome, for the first time in my life, I was depressed. I went through that whole phase of life is stupid, all these jerks are alive, and Jack is dead. And at that time, I was reading this book. It's called Man's Search for Meaning. It was written by Dr. Viktor Frankl, an Austrian psychiatrist. And for some reason, I decided this man can help me move my way out of this sadness that I feel. So I called him. I expected to get the 15th secretary, and I said, "I don't speak German very well, but I need to speak to Dr. Frankl." He said, "Speaking." I said, "Well, I'd like to study with you." He said, "Fine, where are you?" I said, "I'm in Rome." He said, "Well, I'm in Vienna, come and see me." I came to see him. I started studying with him, and I went to his room one night, and I said, "Victor, the world is stupid, it's crazy, it's awful." And for 2 hours, I dumped all of my feelings on Viktor Frankl. And at the end of 2 hours, he looked at me and he said, "You feel great pain because you love this man. Loving someone is a risk, and at times it's a price." And then he said something that changed my life. He said, "I don't know when it will happen, but there will come a moment when you will have to make a decision. You will either get in the grave with Jack Murphy emotionally, or you will understand what his life meant to you, and you will live fully because he gave you meaning." And then he said, "If you bury yourself with Jack, you didn't know who he was." Now, what I'd like to share with you is what I learned from this absolute giant. The first thing I learned was no matter what your circumstances are, there are always choices. Now, if you don't believe that, look at Victor's life. He's in 4 concentration camps. He loses his profession. He loses his citizenship. His wife, Ellie, though he doesn't know it, is gassed at Auschwitz. His father dies at Theresienstadt concentration camp. His mother dies at Auschwitz. He loses almost everybody in his family. And yet he said to me, even in the concentration camp, there were choices. He chose to see life at some point in time back to normal with Ellie. He chose to see himself teaching classes in Vienna. He saw things and made choices. Other people made different choices. Some people, through no criticism, walked to the wire and electrocuted themselves because life was so terrible. Others lived with vengeance and hate because someday they wanted to say, this is what they did to us. So there are choices. You may think a lot of times, and we say this frequently, I had no choice. There is always a choice. And sometimes it's a funny choice. When my children were small, my kids are really different. John was the easygoing, life is wonderful, just give me a toy and I'll be happy. And Marisa is one that tests every single moment, you, life, and everything else around. She took something from her brother at table, and I tried all the nice ways. Let's talk about sharing. Let's talk about why John should have this, why you're such a nice little child and you're going to give this to John. She absolutely stonewalled me. So finally I said to her, okay, Marisa, you have 2 choices. You can give that to John, or I will take it from you and I will give it to John. This little child looked at me and said, I have 3 choices. I can give it to Mommy and she can give it to John. So that's the first thing you learn. There are always choices. The second thing I learned from Victor is the power of the visual. For a long time I thought visualization was a nice thing, but I didn't buy it. But I started to see it through his eyes. And he said, what we see pretty much determines what our lives are like. Now that had an impact on me, but when he took me to San Diego, we worked with the flyers that came back from Vietnam. One of the flyers had been in a Vietnam prison for over 6 years. He had been beaten, starved, he had every lesion you could imagine. He comes to San Diego, he's 6'2", and he weighs 91 pounds. So one of the doctors said to him, you're pretty stable. Is there anything we can do for you? He said, yes. I'd like to play Torrey Pines Golf Course. Doctor said, there is no way you can play Torrey Pines Golf Course. The flyer looked at him and he said, for 6.5 years, people have been telling me what to do. I thought I was home. Okay, now we're stuck. So we have a meeting and we decide we'll let him play. He will collapse at the first hole. We'll pick him up, take him back to the hospital. He'll be dehydrated. Everything will work out. He plays 18 holes of golf. If any of you are golfers, Torrey Pines is a very tough course. He shoots 87, okay? He's dehydrated, we get him back, and the one doctor comes into the room and says, this is mind-blowing. In your shape, the fact that you played 18 holes of golf, incredible. The fact that you shot 87, more remarkable. But what blows my mind, because I'm a golfer, is you didn't 3-putt 1 green. The flyer said, I haven't 3-putt a green in 6.5 years. Every day in his captivity, while they were beating him, while they were starving him, he had no other series of talents. He visualized in his mind golf courses. He visualized himself hitting the ball, and that was so profound that this guy's behavior could be influenced by that. But that's the second thing I learned from Victor. What you see has a tremendous influence on your life. And I'll give you some examples of that. One of them is we have a part of our brain called the reticular activating system. If we didn't have it, we'd all be nuts because it does two things. One is it alerts you to danger. If you're driving down the road and you're going 65 miles an hour, and all of a sudden you have this impulse to pull over to the right lane, it may be because your reticular activating system has sensed that there's a guy behind you coming 100 miles an hour. So one of the primary things about the visual, the reticular, is that it prevents you from harm. You're walking down the street, it's a dark street, there's somebody on the other side, you quicken your pace, or you go into a building. Reticular activating does that. But what is more important is your reticular activating system goes after anything you tell it that is important. I'll give you an example of that. You want to buy a new television set, and you pick up the newspaper and say, oh my God, they're having a sale. They're always having a sale. But see, until the minute it becomes important to you, you don't see it. You want to lease a car? Oh my God, nothing down. The minute that your brain says, this is important, it starts to seek out things. So that's the second thing I want you to remember. Number one, you always have a choice. Number two, what you see has a tremendous influence on your life. Number three, Victor taught me that every human being searches for meaning, a purpose. Everybody in this room, myself included, would like to know that we make a difference and that our lives have meaning and purpose. The fourth thing he taught me was there's a tremendous difference between self-worth and what he would refer to as worthiness. And I'll give you an example. I had the cab ride from hell yesterday. We left Springfield, got to Branson, reasonably good time. We spent 1 hour and a half looking for this place. And I thought we were on candid camera because he kept calling here, and they would say, go to the Walmart and make a right. He would go right through the light, and I'd say, that was the Walmart. Okay? When we finally got here, I left my phone in the car. So now, I've seen every part of Branson, by the way. If you want to know any group that's in town, just call me. I know every group that's in town because I saw every sign 52 times. Now, the reason I tell you that is when I got in that cab on an emotional level of 1 to 10, I was a 10. When I got out, I was about a minus 11. If you look at your week, you will see that your feelings of who you are and how you like yourself and don't like yourself, it goes up and down. And one thing could trigger it, and you can go into an abyss of misery instantly. It can be a kid, it can be your job. So that's the one part. The second part is what Victor would refer to as worthiness. You are not ever not worthy. You may be at the feeling level. Somebody may make you feel unworthy. But your level of your value as a human being, Victor would say, is steady. You deserve to be loved. You deserve to love. You deserve to be understood and to understand. You deserve to be needed and to need and to make a difference in life. He would say that's steady. You don't lose that. You don't lose that because you feel differently. The next thing he taught me is that don't be afraid of your feelings. Feelings, believe it or not, are your friends because they are the signals of what is happening in your life. If you feel hurt or angry or lonely, those are realities. But what a lot of us do, Victor would say, we deny our feelings. We push them down. we rationalize them, and we are so frightened by them that we never let them surface, and all they really are signals, because they tell you what is happening in your life. They tell you that things are maybe not the way you want them to be, and they tell you that maybe you need to look at where are these feelings coming from, what is their import, and what can you do about them. Now, those are just some of the things he taught me, but I'd like to jump ahead to the whole concept of meaning. If it is true that everybody wants meaning, and by the way, before the internet, we used to get 40 letters a day by people who had read this book. And a lot of them had said, I was going to end my life, I was going to kill myself, I thought things were meaningless, I thought life was hopeless. But since I read your book, I have found some meaning in my life. We all want it. We desire it. Some of us even have a passion for it. But why don't a lot of people feel they have purpose or meaning? One of the reasons is we lose the wonder of childhood. Do you remember, or if any of you, I have an 8-year-old granddaughter, and I'm telling you, and boy, does she have my number. She said to me recently, I'm not falling for that Nanu. She calls me Nanu, which is Sicilian for grandfather. And I tried something else, and she said, that's not going to happen. But watching her through her childhood has been phenomenal. You know, if I knew grandchildren were so great, I think I would have had them first. Yeah. They are not boxed in by all the rules yet. You know, the cow is purple, the people are sticks. This is their level of imagination is incredible. But what happens to us? Somewhere along the way, we lose a lot of that. And we lose a lot of that because of the rules. Now, everybody in this room operates on a whole bunch of rules. And a lot of them, you don't even know what they are. Now, some of them aren't so bad. You know, my mother had a rule: treat everybody with respect, care about everyone. And that wasn't always easy with some of the people in her family. I'll give you an example. My Uncle Rudy. My Uncle Rudy was the most difficult person in the world to like, love, or respect. And one night, we are running him down in the kitchen. My brother, my father, and myself. We are laying out everything that we've ever thought or felt about Rudy. And my mother has two incredibly strong characteristics. One is she's unbelievably kind. But two, she's unbelievably truthful. So she's stuck, and she's in the living room, and she's going crazy. Finally, she comes into the living room, and she says, my brother Rudy is an excellent whistler. The only thing she could think to say. Okay? So one of the rules that has stuck with me, when Elaine and I meet somebody who we don't particularly like or enjoy, I'll bet they're good whistlers. Okay? My family, by the way, you could write a Damon Runyon book. I had another uncle, Uncle Joe. When my father was dying, Joe showed up. He didn't show up a lot, but he showed up. And he asked my brother and sister and I if he could have my father's car. We said, sure, Joe, you could have Dad's car. A year and a half later, my sister has myelogenous leukemia. Joe shows up again. Can I have Tina's car? Yeah, you can have Tina's car. When he left, I said to my brother, Russ, if you get an illness and the doctors and nurses surround you and they say, we got it all, and you see Joe in the hallway, you're going to die. Okay? So we learned all these rules. The other rule we learned is, it's a sneaky way of me finding out, where were they starving when you were a child? Where? China. My mother would always say, eat that, the children in China are starving. My brother would say, name two. Okay? We learn so much, but we learn a lot of stuff. Don't trust strangers. Don't speak before you're spoken to. Don't ever make anyone uncomfortable. Never criticize. we wind up with a whole bunch of rules, and those rules a lot of times determine our behavior. So one of the things that some of us are stuck with through our rules is we have to be perfect. How many of you are perfect? I tried for years. Okay? You can never be perfect, but the expectation sometimes coming out is that you have to be perfect. You certainly want to be excellent. But if you strive to be perfect, you're going to be miserably unhappy, because happiness is not in perfection. Happiness is in striving to be excellent. So one of the things I would suggest to you as a practical manner is at some point in time, if you choose to, and by the way, you will have 20,000 moments today to make decisions. I'm not going to force you to make any of them. Every single day, you have 20,000 moments in which you can change your life. 20,000 moments. At any given moment, you can say to yourself, I choose something different. Now, how would you do that? I want you to tell me anything you would like to change, but if your boss is sitting next to you, I suggest that you not say, I'd like her to change, okay? What would you like to change? Anybody. Give me one thing you'd like to change in your life. Poverty? Okay. Procrastination, okay. Let me give you a couple. I just went through, about 2 months ago, I was feeling very sluggish. Travel has become a nightmare today. You know, it's not like it used to be. So I was kind of getting chunky, lazy, no workout, feeling like, ugh. My daughter, who's this workout freak, the one who has choices, she said to me, Dad, I'm trying something now you may want to consider. She said, I want you to consider going 30 days without sugar, sweeteners, rice, pasta, bread, dairy. She went on and on and on and on, and I thought, oh my God. So my initial reaction was, there is no way I'm going to do this. Then I thought about it, and I thought, wait a minute. I'm really not very happy with the shape I'm in. I'm not talking about the body beautiful. I gave that up years ago. I don't feel great. I don't have energy. I'm not sleeping like I could. I don't get up in the morning with this robust attitude. I'm going to try it. Well, the third day, I was ready to jump out the window. I had a carbohydrate headache that would kill a horse, but I kept going. I did it for 8 weeks. I never once deviated. I'm going to write to the Guinness Book of Records, by the way, because no Italian has ever gone 8 weeks without a slice of bread. Now, why did I do that? The key reason was, and this is the one thing I'd like you to remember, I was dissatisfied. All change ultimately comes from dissatisfaction. You don't change anything unless you're dissatisfied. You know, if you want to exercise more and you start to think about that, you're dissatisfied with the way you feel. If you hate your job, one of the reasons you hate your job is because you're dissatisfied. And so if you think about any change in your life that was made began with dissatisfaction. You ever notice, by the way, when you find out you have bought a new house, how dissatisfied you become with the old house? All those things that you tolerated for years, they start to bother you because, again, getting back to what you see, that's not what you want. That's not what you desire. And what you see is because you're dissatisfied. Now, I would tell you that because you can use dissatisfaction positively, too. You can use it negatively, or you can use it positively. It has the same effect. You can become dissatisfied by seeing something you want. And by seeing that, the more you see it, the more you say it, the more you feel it, it becomes motivation. And motivation is a nice word, really, that comes from momentum. It's movement. So if you want to start to look at things you want to change, and you want to start to look at where is my meaning, where is my purpose, one of the things you want to look at is your feelings, and then you want to start to cultivate your dissatisfaction. Now, a lot of times that's going to make you scared, because we are all comfortable where we are, myself included. How many of you have a watch on? Raise your hands if you have a watch on. Take that watch off and put it on the other hand. You know what's going to happen? You're going to feel uncomfortable, because you have been putting that watch on for many, many years in the same spot. When I shave, I start with the same thing. I go here, I go there, I go here, I go. We are so routinized, we are so habitualized that we don't even realize we do the same things over and over and over and over again, and they create comfort. We love to be comfortable. The problem is that meaning and life and change and all things that we really want, they're on the other side of the comfort zone. See, life begins where your comfort zone ends. And we get back again to the rules. The rules a lot of times make you uncomfortable, and so you buy into them. Now, rules aren't bad, even though I, as an Italian, view every rule as a suggestion. They're not bad, but they are harmful if they don't have ownership. It's okay for you to say, I don't really like speaking in front of a group. How many of you do not like to speak in front of a group? The number one fear of Americans, by the way. And whenever somebody is forced to speak in front of a group that doesn't like to speak in front of the group, what happens is the relationship between mind and body goes in and they say, good morning, I'm very happy to be here. No, she's not happy to be here, she's happy to be there, okay? And so whenever we feel discomfort, we want to get back to where we were. And when you get back to where you were, unfortunately, your life does not become extraordinary. Now, this isn't hype that I'm going to tell you. If you look around this room, no one looks exactly like you. No one thinks exactly like you. No one processes information exactly like you. No one has the exact rules that you have. And if you think about that, I could truly look out and say, this is an audience of one-of-a-kinds. Now, if you went into a museum and somebody told you, that's one of a kind, you would be impressed. But we're not impressed by the fact that you are one of a kind. The world has never seen you before. It will never see you again. It will never have anyone exactly like you again. And yet we poo-poo that because the rules get involved and we say, I should be that, I should be that, I should be like that. I'm not smart enough, I'm not tall enough, I weigh too much. We go on and on and on, and we never celebrate who we are. We never see life as purposeful. We never understand that we make a difference. We never understand that there's a meaning, at least one meaning in the life that nobody else can fulfill but you. And so we go through life, and a lot of us are super busy. We're covered with obligations. We don't have time. And so we buy into limitations. Every time we start to step out of our comfort zone, we are reminded of our limitations. I don't have the time. I don't have the money. I don't have the resources. Da-da, da-da, da-da. And what happens is we're stuck. Now, it's okay for you to be stuck if you choose to be stuck. But life has more than that for everybody in this room, myself included. Now, one of the ways you become unstuck is to ask yourself, do I accept the limitations? See, I had to do this with that crazy 30-day thing. I started to run through every limitation. I don't have the time. I travel. There's no way I can do that on the road. Da-da, 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 da-da. And finally, I came to the point and I said, wait a minute. Do I buy into that limitation? And the answer was no. One of the ones you will hear yourself say a lot, I don't have the time. You have the time for anything you think is meaningful and purposeful. And we start with the words wish. Wish is a pretty weak word, but we all have them. We wish for something to happen. Probably doesn't happen because of our rules, our limitations, and our lack of comfort. But sometimes dissatisfaction rises a little bit, and we say, not only do I wish that, but I want that. A little stronger word. Still, we're not going anywhere because the rules and the limitations have jumped out again. So we have, I'd really like to have that. And the more you cultivate that, the more your dissatisfaction level is going to go up. But you're still not there. The key word is, what do you choose? Because you have 20,000 opportunities today to choose something different. Now, meaning, by the way, we are unfortunately trip over the concept that meaning has to be you have to write the great American novel. Or you have to find a cure for cancer. Meaning is a buffet, and it's all around you. There will be all sorts of opportunities today for you to find meaning. Now, where do you find it? One of the places you find it, you can find it at work. You spend half your life at work. And I am always amazed at how many people, in 22 years, I'm going to retire. And so I have this miserable job that I hate, but in 22 years, I'm going to retire. Wow! 22 years of being unhappy, miserable, and missing the point. Now, you are fortunate in a sense because you are nurses. Number 1 or 2 trusted occupation in the United States. You have the opportunity every day to deal with people who are frightened, who are upset, who are sick, who are angry, who feel hopeless. You are, for many of them, the only buoy of hope that they have. When my sister was dying of cancer, those nurses at the University of Pennsylvania, they understood that it wasn't only Tina that had cancer, we all had cancer. They treated the family with such kindness and love and respect that their meaning was to help us deal with the most significant things that were happening in our lives. You may not know that, but every day that you go to work as a nurse, and there's that great Johnson & Johnson ad that says, you know, if this happened, thank a nurse. You have the impact, the ability to see, to touch, to feel, and to find meaning in your work. I'll give you another example of somebody who found meaning in their work. And by the way, nobody ever becomes great in an organization unless the organization cares about its people. I love those slogans. We care about our people. Yeah, right. If you really care about your people and you love them and you cultivate them and you let them grow, those are the organizations that touch the world with meaning. A friend of mine was president of a pharmaceutical company. And believe it or not, one of the products that they had was the egg coloring. Now, how it ever wind up in the pharmaceutical business, I don't know. But I was at a meeting with Dave, and he came up and he said, why in heaven's name do we have an egg coloring business? And one of the finance guys said, Dave, it's 98% profit. $12 million. We make over $11 million. He said, we're keeping it. Okay? Well, Dave is on his way to Japan, and he's a real fan of reading his mail. And he opens up this letter, and it says, Dear Mr. Collins, thank you very much for ruining Easter. We bought this thing. We have a tradition in our family. We sit around and we color these eggs. And every one of those products that we bought from you was flawed. You ruined our Easter. The stores were closed. Thank you very much. I hope you have a nice Easter. Dave hands it to Joyce and says, I'm on my way to Japan. I want to answer that when I get back. Goes to Japan. He comes back. Gets a letter. Looking, Dear Mr. Collins, you are the best, most wonderful man in the world. It's the same person. Joyce, after he went to Japan, went down to the store. She got every non-pharmaceutical product that they made over the counter. She got flowers and candy. She drove 100 miles. She knocked on the door and she said, Mrs. Harkins, I'm here to represent Mr. Collins. We are so apologetic for ruining your Easter. She got it. So one of the places is work. The second place is relationship. What are your relationships like? You know, we are all strangers. Two people fall in love, but they're totally strangers. People go to work every day, but they're totally strangers. What are the rules? You know, you see the world differently than I do. In my family, when you visited, it took 2 hours to get in and 2 hours to get out. And the rule was, if it was moving, kiss it. Okay? Well, if you grow up in a family that isn't tactile, people may say, you know, she's not the warmest person in the world. That doesn't mean anything. My father-in-law, Irish background, was one of the kindest, most generous, wonderful man I ever met. But he wasn't comfortable with touching. And so you had to know what the signals were. Speaking of him, by the way, he never knew what was going on in the family as far as expenses. And my wife is one of 4 daughters. And the mother, Dorothy, always bought their clothing at the geranium tree. Nice shop. So he's writing checks. Oh my God, Dorothy, how many geraniums do we need? Okay? So the point always is, if you are in a relationship and you are dissatisfied, look at the feeling level. Your feelings, if you're hurt, try to find out, why am I hurt? Because a lot of times it's based on expectations and mind reading, and you can find more meaning in your relationship if you identify what you need and you convey that. And so, unfortunately, I'm boxed in a little bit by time here, so I'm going to jump to a conclusion. My message to you today is simply this: I can't change you. I have no right to change you. But what I will tell you is this: you have 20,000 moments today, tomorrow, and every day to change your life. How do you change your life? You find out what's really important, because everybody here has meaning, can find meaning, and will be fulfilled by meaning. You have the ability to make your life more extraordinary through ordinary things, through your work, through your relationships, through a cause, whatever. You need to do that, though, if you choose to, by leveling and raising up your levels of dissatisfaction. You need to alter your speech. The minute you say, I can't do, your brain shuts down. The minute you say, there is no way, your brain shuts down. Look at your limitations. Do you accept them? Are you not smart enough? Do you not have the time? Are you not wealthy enough? Whatever it is, if you accept it, you are a great candidate to change. The next thing is, let your toe come out of that comfort zone. Life is on the other side of that comfort zone, and fear of failure, which we've all experienced, is the most immobilizing thing in the world. Failure is nothing more than feedback. We have all failed, but failure is feedback. The minute you cave and say, I'm never going to do that again, failure has owned your life. Don't let failure own your life. And I'll give you one example. I wrote this book, and I got a 3-page letter from an agent, and he said, I love this book. And he went on and on and on and on. And at the end of it, he said, but I can't represent you because you are a nobody. Okay? If we let those words or failure in our lives kill us, stop us, stifle our souls, we miss the point. Your lives are not ordinary. They are extraordinary. You are one of a kind. If you choose to change your life, you are never too old, you are never too weak, you are never without resources, and there are choices. Thank you. By the way, I'm going to be around this afternoon if anybody wants to chat.